Number 212, Basarios. 5 out of 5. Hear me out. The concept of a mimic in the Monster Hunter world as a rare ore vein is inspired as hell. There's so many ways you could take this concept that I don't know if stealing the it heats up its own body to make itself easy to kill mechanic was the best idea. From mining ore from its back to that satisfying as hell chest part break, I can't help but love this humble rock golem mimic. That's the wrong golem, buddy. I honestly love Basarios way more than I thought. The rock camouflage works so well in the old Volcano and Expedition map because they pepper the outcroppings all over whether Basarios is in the quest or not, unlike Nibblesnarf who manifests the dune formations when he's a quest monster. I remember getting surprised at all the different elements and statuses that Basarios has. He's like the schoolyard bully to Yan Cutu, still a big, dumb, clumsy baby, but he spits up fireballs and has a tantrum rather than just being a gangly and awkward bird. Always fun to fight the big goof. His and Gravos' concept is solid, pun intended, because we need more mimic monsters that hide in plain sight. I do kind of wish he had the pseudo-wyvern skeleton rather than the standard flying wyvern skeleton. I don't know why, but there's something about the way he looks that just screams to me that he should be walking and trudging on all fours. I love this stupid rock baby that is the ability to horse tranquilizer. 4 out of 5. Unironically, I like him. I think the whole concept of a monster that tries to blend with the environment by basically trying to be a literal rock is very simple yet brilliant. And knowing the fact that he appeared back in Monster Hunter 1, in which his gimmick makes him really stand out from the other monsters in the game, that's pretty sick. And to add things up, in my opinion, his fight has a nice balance between monsters being tanky and at the same time, the fight not going on too long to the point of frustration. But I'm saying all this about first and second generation. In the future, even though he and his fight became better, they introduced a lot more monsters that, in my opinion, have more fun fights and overall better gimmicks. Number 211, Apex Arzos. It's probably the best Arzos for me, but it's kind of just a more aggressive Arzos. Though I do have a joke where I like to call him the Monster Hunter Cocaine Bear, and that is enough to get him a 3 out of 5. 5 out of 5 for me. I'm just going to come out and say this is my favorite version of Arzos. He is by far the most menacing looking bear monster before MH Wilds. The way the black fur makes the red veins and eyes glow is bone chilling. This apex monster is the second most distinct one out of the 6 apexes. The number 1 most distinct goes to Apex Zinogre. Seriously though, fighting this one is a rush if you stand your ground instead of just zipping around it. They removed what made Red Helm unique. Good. Red Helm sucked. Crappy hit zones, constantly standing up, and massive size so you can never actually reach his one barely serviceable weak zone. Not fun. Apex, though, remains normal Arzos size, and your attacks will actually do decent damage to him. Thumbs up from me. However, while this fight isn't just suffering anymore, besides perhaps the One Punch Bear event quest in Base Rise, it's not like it suddenly became great either. His moveset is pretty bland, a product of him just being an early game monster powered up into the late game. He still mostly just swipes at you and sits on you, but now he does a lot more damage. So, while I absolutely prefer the fight over Red Helm, it's only enough for me to give him a single extra star, which immediately gets confiscated again because he doesn't have gear. 2 stars, same as Red Helm. What a shame, he was almost average. This is the last Rampage Apex I have anything positive to say about, as I honestly believe that fight-wise, they're an improvement over Red Helm. Red Helm is one of my least favorite deviants due to how annoying I find they are to actually fight, especially with their size and their tendency to spam their claw swipe combo, which through their size pretty much forces you to camp behind them the entire fight, and that's not particularly fun. Apex keeps the larger size, but makes it a lot less annoying, namely by shortening the slash combos, as well as ending their combos with a bear hug, making them harder to avoid simply by camping behind him. They're also capable of performing their dab attack twice in a row, and he can perform it even after their giant leap, making it much more threatening than before. Plus, their hit zones aren't absolute dog shit anymore. While this should be enough to knock him up to 3 stars, one above what I gave to Red Helm, the fact that they don't have any gear I feel is enough to knock them back down. However, if Red Helm does come back, I would love for these changes to be given to him. 2 out of 5, so close to being good. Unlike all the other legally distinct Apex monsters, this one can actually be seen as an improvement over Red Helm, but only due to the 5th gen update for regular Arzos. But it's still a deviant copy-paste, so 2 stars at best. Number 210, Copper Blangonga. For a Gen 2 subspecies, I think this is actually the best one. It's not just monkey throw rock now. His breath attack stuns you instead of a snowball. It's a much more threatening move to take head on. He lives in an entirely different environment, has decently noticeable model changes. 4 stars for the little guy. Monkey rock throw go burr, 5 out of 5. My hottest Monster Hunter take is that Copper is a peak monster, which is a huge shame since Wild's reveal trailer shows he's potentially being replaced by a new baboon on the block. Visual design? Gorgeous. His difference from normal? Pioneering. He takes Snowgonga's I'm him aura, turns that up to 12, 5 out of 5. I always saw him as more or less the pioneer of what subspecies have become later down the line. And I respect him for that, 3 stars. The first ever decent and original subspecies. Sure, nowadays he'd need a huge revamp, but the concept of original subspecies had to start somewhere. Number 209, Emerald Congalala. So this is a Congalala with a cool color scheme that farts even more than the original. I can respect that. 4 out of 5. Needs confirmation, but I think is the only one that can climb like Kechawacha and fart at the same time. Also, he can do a supercharged fart, which is incredibly cool. I'll die on that hill. Otherwise, same pros and cons as the OG. Previous one was Fart Monkey. Now it is Shart Monkey. 5 stars. I see this as an improved version of Congalala in every way. The design is at the right level of being both intimidating and silly, its attacks are significantly stronger and faster, and it uses its soil-causing moves more often. Honestly, deserves a 4 out of 5 despite its ridiculous concept. You know, I think this is the first actually good subspecies. Plum was alright, but Emerald feels like it's got some actual notable additions and differences from the original, while maintaining the essence of the classic monster. It feels weird to say that Emerald Congalala is a 3.8, but hey, nothing wrong with the nuclear fart monk. Yeah, 3.8, round that up to 4, pretty damn good. Also, love the beard on him, it's great. Number 208, Zora Magdaros. Zora is a tragic monster. He's such an amazing idea with an amazing spectacle, interesting lore, and a pretty good fight. It just took him an extra few months for them to actually figure that fight out with the Arch-Tempered version, and that's kind of sad. It's obvious that a lot of attention went into Zora, so seeing him get bashed is kind of sad, though it's valid. Its concept and design are fantastic. It really showed what World was capable of. Kind of like the devs were saying, you want to see how big things are gonna get in this game? How about a dragon that's also a mountain, that's also a map? However, I never felt like I was really fighting it. This is a major downside for me. I still love you, Zora, but you're not one of my favorites. The way Arch-Tempered Zora worked should have been the default experience for the final confrontation with it in the storyline. It would at least have been more memorable, forcing you to be proactive in trying to stop it. It's strange and infuriating how you literally don't really need to do anything except for that final phase of the siege of the barricade. It would probably be more engaging if you didn't do anything on his back and just let it come at the barrier at full health and speed. I don't hate Zora as much as most people do. Personally, I do appreciate that Capcom tried to make him interesting to fight. The on-monster sections of the quest can be kind of fun at times, especially when Nergigante shows up to ruin the day, but the other parts are just a total drag. Cannon Simulator 2018 and waiting for 5 minutes really just doesn't cut it for making up the bulk of that quest time, and it hurts Zora as a result. Side note, the Arch-Tempered's time crunch really makes the quest feel stressful, like you're just fighting against the clock. I love that. He also looks gorgeous and has an amazing track. It's such a shame his quest is so boring. 3 out of 5. Hey, his armor is cool. Number 207, Blue Yan Cutu. And so it begins. The old trend of taking a monster, giving it a different color, a single new move, maybe a different element, and calling it a day. But I don't mind a lot of these, as quite a few usually have some unique explanation for why they are a different color. Except for Blue Cutu. He's just blue. If I remember correctly, there isn't any reason that ever explains why he's blue, he just is, and that's the most Cutu thing ever. He's just blue. Because he can. And that's yet another reason why I love this goofy chicken. They never take him seriously, and I love that, because in my opinion, if Blue Yan Cutu had an explanation like, oh, it's been scorched by its own flame sack and has been hunted down for its entire life, so now its skin is blue to show its power, some type thing like that, it wouldn't nearly be as charming. For the actual differences in his fight, I think he breathes fire a little more, uses a couple of different fire attacks, I don't remember. You could tell me this guy's existence was a coloring bug in development, it was just patched over, and I would believe it. It's still Cutu, it's still his wacky, hungry self, but with a literal fresh coat of paint. Also, I love calling him Yan Cutu. Yan Cutu gets a 4 out of 5. Our first subspecies, and it is Yan Cutu, but blue. I don't think the blue jives as well as the initial red. Nothing major changes other than like a beak slam and bowling two conchus at once at a curved angle, which is kind of cool. So 3 out of 5. 2 out of 5. She's Cutu but blue, ain't it? 3 out of 5. He puts some stank on it when he throws conchus, but that's about it. One of the few subspecies that are smaller than the original, and while I would like to see more of that, he doesn't really sell ya on the idea. Rework into the stamina down, inflicting professional conchu bowler, and now we're talking. Number 206. Here to take the reins on this next entry, we have Fortuan, head of the Hunters Hub podcast. He's going to discuss one of his favorites, Plesioth.
Hello, I am Fortuan from the Hunters Hub again, and I'm here to talk about Plesioth and read comments for this wonderful Piscine wyvern. I know a lot of people don't like it, and it's got jokes with the hip check and stuff. To be honest, though, we don't have a lot of fish-like monsters, and it was a wonderful sight to behold in its full-sized glory back in the day. So I've always taken a liking to this monster, but then again, my favorite is Diablos, because how much I had to fight it. So who knows, maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. But without further ado, let's get to the comments about Plesioth. First by Majin Matt Plays. I feel like Plesioth has a good monster hiding under the janky hitboxes and goofy design. 3 out of 5 for me, but I could see him moving up with another good showing. This one by Carcharadroid. Unironically, the coolest looking Piscine wyvern. Carried a bit by meme status, but I sincerely like him as a creature and think he's another case of untapped potential, but not as dire as Cephadrome. 4 out of 5. Next is by Chico Mode 7544. The jankest monster, the big fish. As kind of irritating as the fight is, this is just because they reused a lot from Cephadrome, but his saving grace was underwater, and it's a darn shame we might not get that fight back. 3 out of 5. Next is Manectrix 2000. I'm not joking here, his 3U fight is amazing. I was expecting the underwater part to be bad, but it actually is fine. To me, this barely gets 3 stars thanks to the 3U fight. And lastly, by Dorian6032, Plesioth is a 5 stars for his legendary meme status alone, and you can't change my mind. It was he who separated the weak from the strong all the way back in Freedom Unite. Praise the hyperspace hip check fish! Alright, so Fortuan here again. As you can see from the comments, not the most loved monster still, and a lot of people for the meme, but in my heart, it's a 5-star. And that's where I voted it. Have a good one.
Number 205, Uron. 5 out of 5 for me. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely not the first monster I would want in my monster roster. But even I can't deny that he's designed pretty well. Dealing with a T-Rex sized Beyblade that drops landmines is a damn fun time. This will always be my number 2 monster of the franchise. He's just a silly rock bunching guy that I can't help but love. And his fight is just super unique, kind of wonderful. Some people may not be able to see the beauty that Uron brings, but I sure do. If Rachna didn't exist taking my number 1 spot, he would still be there. Such peak monster design and a peak fight. I love him. Planning how to get the chin break was a lot of fun and try. I'd always use Switch Axe from Mind's Eye, put him in a pitfall trap and bomb him. In World, it was kind of trivial to get that chin break, but I understand for most weapons that that's an improvement. Not my favorite fight, but definitely one that is grown on me a lot over time, and I think the design is great. 4 out of 5, but more like 3 out of 5. I feel like there's a lot of space between a 3 and a 4. Alright, time to start catching up on these Monster Hunter rankings. I wonder what critter is up for today. Well, Uron is not my favorite brute wyvern. That said, there's a lot I appreciate about him. I like that he quite literally puts a spin on the brute wyvern rig by curling himself into a tire. It's a fun visual and creative use of his long body type. I think that it's pretty neat that you can mine ores right off his body when you knock him down. It feels like a nice reward as well as a neat little decision for the hunter. Do you mine or do you deal a little more damage? But I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed the fights. I agree with what I've read in the comments, that he feels like he has too many hit points. By the time he's limping, you kind of just want the fight to be over. 2 out of 5, I like the novelty of him existing, it's just not a very fun fight. Honestly, I feel bad for Uron. I think in concept and ecology, he's an actually decent monster. I loved his hammer in 3U, and his firewheel attacks in World are pretty awesome, but unfortunately his design is what lets him down. He's fine for the most part until you reach his face. The chin looks impractical, and the way it curves around the front of his face makes it look like he can't even eat because his own chin is in the way of his face. And what makes it worse is that his concept art was actually kind of awesome, but something happened between then and try, so he's currently a 2-star for me. Number 204, Ruby Basarios. Perhaps I treated you too harshly. I specifically fought him again to see if my previous thoughts on him were too harsh. They definitely were. He looks good. He's way less bland than the normal Basarios with the rubies on his back. The moss is also a lot more noticeable and vibrant on this one. Unlike other Gen 1 and Gen 2 subspecies, he actually has some new moves. He has the crystal body shaking that can inflict stun and noxious poison gas. He uses his lasers a lot more frequently. And as a result, he doesn't constantly deny you getting near him with spamming either fire sleep or said noxious poison gas. He's better than the regular Basarios, a 1-star monster in my opinion, for that stuff alone. I am actually allowed to hit this one, and I frequently use him in both of my new Stories 1 and 2 playthroughs. 3 stars. He definitely falls behind almost everything else introduced in the 4th generation, but he is not the worst variation of a monster. I can name at least 5 worse than this one. Basarios waited 3 whole generations for a subspecies, and this is what you came up with. The biggest thing about Ruby Basarios is that he has these easily dodgeable crystals that he flings off of himself during a couple of attacks, and it's really just a worse version of Baroth's Mudshake, and you can avoid it wicked easily just by standing under him, which is his best hit zone. The one cool thing they gave him in G rank is launching the crystals at you during his triple flame gas attacks, meaning you have to keep moving during it, which makes the attack more threatening. But one cool change to a single move doesn't a good subspecies make. The design is also a bit lazy. All other subspecies have the color of the base monster. Ruby just adds some crystals sticking out of his back. Most variants change more from their base forms than that. 2 out of 5. Yeah, Ruby looks pretty. That's kind of about it. It doesn't really have a lot of new moves. It doesn't shake up the formula all that much. It doesn't add anything particularly interesting. It doesn't lead to an awesome new Gravos form. It just kind of exists and's kind of meh to me. So I'll give him a 3. Like, he's fine. He could be better, but I don't have any strong feelings on him. This guy is one of the subspecies that should just be retconned into the higher G rank moveset of Basarios, because it's not a bad fight. I'd say it's like a 3 out of 5. I can't really say that Basarios and Ruby Basarios stand apart from each other particularly well. Great idea, poor execution, deserves a second chance, so he's kind of like a 3-star at his best. Number 203, Aurora Somnicanth. I like it. I have fun fighting it. It's a pretty good challenging fight. Not as interesting as the regular Somnicanth, but it didn't spit in my crops or burn my shake or anything like that. I do quite like the cold, dead, emaciated look. It reminds me of salmon after they spawn. Just the pretty name that held it back. Apparently this is a hot take, but I don't hate Aurora that much. Maybe because I originally wasn't a fan of regular shell mechanic, but I used to think she was better and more streamlined. The fight's pretty good. Did it remove a lot of what made the original unique? Yes, but it didn't make her boring or annoying. The ice spikes are basic, but fine, and the regular attacks are still fun, even when it's just those. It's a massive visual upgrade though. The white and deep blues make her look gorgeous, and I wish the regular had something similar. I don't know, I don't see the hate. Yes, Aurora is a downgrade from the regular, but it's not bad in the slightest. Don't get me wrong, I didn't think she's spectacular or anything, but I'd take Aurora over the early gen subspecies any day. 3 out of 5. Honestly, she lost so much of what made the original amazing, but did gain something in return and is still an enjoyable fight, and it could have been way worse. 3 out of 5. So close to being good. Making her more colorful, like having actual Aurora colors in her head crest, not having her have the same habitat as the regular Somnicanth, would have absolutely been enough to push her even further though. The idea of an icy banshee or land-based Somnicanth is really cool, but I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity with the ecology to show off a different kind of singing, or maybe add icy roars, almost like Euconlos, but kind of like in the style of Brute Tigrex. Number 202, Volvidon. Volvidon is not as annoying as many people think. He's a really goofy armadillo bear with some low-brow humor that still makes me chuckle sometimes. It's very different from the other bears, moving like a pinball and having ranged options. The paralysis is not that bad. If you know where the spit's gonna land, you'll be fine. And if you do get hit, he most likely isn't gonna punish you too badly. Also, his armor is so good for early game Switch Axe builds in both Rise and 3U. 4 out of 5, best bear boy. Volvidon has a lot of quirks that could be seen as annoying, but can you be mad at it? No, at least I can't. Armadillos are awesome creatures, and combining them with a bear somehow works. It isn't my favorite of the trio, but every time I look at it, it gets a little bit funnier. Volvidon is the perfect intro to high rank monsters. You start off with Arzos and Lagombi, pretty simple fights, but they teach you about mobility, placement, and hit zones. You focus the butt of the bear monsters for max damage. Volvidon flips that on its head by having its tough shell, making you want to fight him head on, which lets his moveset shine. He's fast, he's silly, he can paralyze you, and he also uses stench, which I actually think is a good ailment. He can mess you up if you're not careful, which I feel is a good intro to the higher raw damage from high rank. I quite like Volvi. Pretty interesting and unique moveset, but man, does he look so much better in GU than he does in Rise. He went from a really deep maroon with some purplish highlights to washed out reddish orange. I hope, since Wild seems to be going back to brighter, more saturated colors, that if Volvi comes back, he'll look more like he does in GU again. 4 stars. Volvidon is a pretty solid twist on the bear skeleton. Like Lagombi, it does recycle a decent number of Arzos attacks, but Volvidon has enough new to itself that I think it fares better. Taking on the armadillo aspects makes for a fun and silly monster with a wonderfully unique movement style. And the fact that you can smack it while it's rolled up and mess it up bad is pretty great. Paralysis is annoying, but it's not hard to play around with, and same goes for stench attacks. I think Volvidon is a pretty good monster. Number 201. Apex Rathian. I'm honestly pretty surprised at how little flying wyverns there are in this generation. Like, I feel like we missed one. Anyways, we're at the last stretch of the Apexes, and Apex Rathian is one of the better ones. Her design is one of my favorites of the class, which is surprising considering she's essentially just a purple recolor, but I think its simplicity works. Apex Rathian is just Dread Queen, but without a lot of the downsides. She's a lot more manageable, which is admittedly mostly due to Rise being a lot less jank than GU, as well as just being considerably faster. I still wouldn't call her incredible. However, like Dread Queen, Apex Rathian struggles with not having many of her own unique moves stand out. Arguably even more so due to her being a reskinned deviant. Apex Rathian could be a lot worse. She's decent, 3 out of 5. Probably the best of the Apexes in my eyes, which isn't saying much, but still, it doesn't leave behind extremely important aspects of the original Deviant like Mizu and Diablos. And the fight is fine. Noxious Poison was awful on Dread Queen and brought down her otherwise good fight in my opinion, but we don't have to deal with it on Apex, and that alone actually makes me enjoy it a lot more than Dread Queen. Overall, it's Rathian with a bit more oomph. As a Sword and Shield main, Rathian is an easily satisfying monster to hunt in Rise. Because if you Metsu the backflip, you'll hit her right in the head. Apex has the altered backflips, which require a little bit more skill from you. So it's a lot more engaging to hunt, but you'll still get the normal backflips pretty frequently too, retaining the satisfaction of fighting the normal Rathian. Overall, Apex is a pretty good late game version of an early game monster, and would honestly probably be 4 stars from me if it weren't for the lack of gear. 3 stars. Final. Dread Queen Rathian with 1 less attack, the flaming bite and burst given to Apex and Silver Rathalos for some reason, and without any equipment, 2 out of 5. I mean, Dread Queen's cool. I don't really know why Rise went with Apexes instead of Deviants. I feel like they just kind of devalued the whole idea. It's 4 stars, just a really fun fight. Probably the most fun Rathian fight in all of Monster Hunter, which is quite impressive since I despise Rathian in most of its forms. Number 200. Azure Rathalos. The color is great when there's actually color to it instead of the world version. The fight, though, is the worst aspects of Rathalos. Hopefully he can get a revamp like the Rise Rathalos. In the pre-World games, he was mainly just blue Rathalos. In World, I did like that he used the aerial moves more. Honestly, I enjoy the fight for Azure Rathalos in World. The toxin keeps you on your toes, and for me using Insect Glaive, the fact that he's flying for 70% of the fight doesn't really bother me, although I can see if you're playing a grounded weapon how this fight could be annoying. Blue's not exactly my go-to color for Rathalos, as I'm kind of biased towards red or silver, and not to mention he suffers the issues of a first-gen subspecies a little bit, and those haven't been properly fixed, though at least he did try to emphasize the Sky King title. 3 out of 5. Number 199, Black Gravos. Love the design, and the sweeping laser upgrade is seriously intense. 4 out of 5 for respect. I want it back with a better fight. 4 out of 5, just Gravos but harder and more badass, plus he gets that sick charged death ray attack in 4U. 4 stars. A fun step up for Gravos, who's already a great monster. Bigger tank, more beam attacks, what's not to love about it? It was so sad to not see Gravos in Rise, but we may get both in Wilds. Here's open, right? They could also easily make both of them even better. A decent upgrade to Gravos, who I already really like. You'll have to watch out for more gas explosions, which is a little bit annoying, but I really like his turning laser attack. Overall, he's about the same as Gravos to me. Feels a bit off in the Primal Forest and 4U, but whatever. Number 198, Velociraptor. He's a nice introductory monster, but that's about it. He is a straight-up Velociraptor. I wish he had a more draconic face like the Jaggy, a way to coordinate his attacks with minions like Azuchi, or an extra concept like Macau. 2 stars for me, just because I think that nearly every other Droman great is a bit better. I don't hate him by any stretch of the imagination, though. He was the first challenge in Monster Hunter, the first big guy you ran into. He's a legend for that. The Veloci's don't have much going on, but man, I don't know. I kind of like simplicity in design sometimes. It's a nice, monsterized version of an outdated Dromaeosaur. Nothing more, nothing less. Still looks way better than a lot of monsterized raptors designs I see. Velociraptor is definitely a milestone monster, who set in place the trope of a raptor boss. I don't think there's anything wrong with his simplicity, but since they've never wanted to complicate him, he's shown his age in the newer games where they bring him back. Great Jaggy is his successor for sure. Was probably good back in the day, but aged like a bag of shredded cheese in the trunk of your car when it's 120 degrees outside, compared to Great Macau, Great Azuchi, and Great Jaggy. Looking at it now, it doesn't do anything good. But it's not particularly offensive compared to its brothers from Hell, so I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Perfect introduction to the whole Monster Hunter universe. You must stay focused on the smaller ones and his continuing repositioning. Love the vibrant colors and the beak, 4 out of 5. Number 197. Nightshade Paolumu. I certainly like Nightshade more than the other, but unlike Viper, I'm not out here defending it as much. Nightshade has some great colors. The switch from white to black would have been a meh change on its own, but Nightshade's fur is almost like oil with how it shines. Not to mention the false eyes when inflated are wonderfully unique. If you're gonna fight Nightshade, then you're gonna have to bring sleep resistance. While the sleep attacks are fun and unique, they're quite frequent and makes that element more annoying than fun. However, if you do bring sleep res, it's kinda just the regular but with a few new attacks. It's a double-edged sword, but personally I think the creativity on the sleep attacks is enough for me to look past some of the other issues. Nightshade is a decent expansion on the regular Paolumu, however, like the regular, still has some untapped potential. 3 out of 5. Another of the new subspecies, and one I also have a good opinion of. I do not love it as much as Coral, Viper, or Fulgur, but it is still an improvement to the base monster, giving another beast the sleep ailment. And this one truly weaponizes it, firing off so many clouds of knockout gas that it can quickly coat the floor of a room. Not only does it make it so that hunters have to build to counter this condition, but it also hides the bat in the fog, allowing it a bit of a surprise with its attacks. Not to mention from a visual standpoint, it goes from being very simple and pale to dark with a lot of color, and a lot more hypnotizing, which fits with how it puts enemies to sleep. Definitely more interesting than the base Paolumu, but nothing too crazy. A solid addition to the roster though. 3 out of 5. Colors are cute, but the fight boils down to whether or not you have room for sleep res 3 or not. 5 stars. Austin's redemption of Radobon is my redemption of Nightshade. This guy went from one of my least favorites to favorite subspecies in Iceborne. The design is so much better than the original, especially with the fake eyes. The fight is a lot more engaging as the sleep gas forces you to think about positioning, and Nightshade actually punishes you for falling asleep. So you're never sitting there waiting for the sleep to wear off. His ecology and why he fits into the Wildspire Waste works surprisingly well, and overall this is a more welcome subspecies to the original Paolumu. cooler color palettes, and fake eyes in the balloon mode, but it's got the same problem as other AoE monsters. The sleep clouds are just sitting there doing nothing unless the player runs into it or Nightshade spreads it around. Add on to this that, like most status monsters, you can just run res skills to ignore half the fights. It makes the sleep come off as a side effect to the wind attacks compared to, say, Bracky leaving slime with almost all of its attacks and being able to change their effects, or how Lunastra can grow the intensity of her fire puddles.